back to another episode of your Digit Hustle News. As always, I'm Wade Teamer. Ladies and gentlemen, Craig Wright was found not liable for breach of climbing business partnership. So, in this video, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about a couple different topics, okay? The main one, of course, is blockchain IP, intellectual property rights, and the blockchain. I have been researching this topic ever since news of this trial reached my desk, okay? Essentially, this is going to cause a lot of discussion in the comments. I know it is. I waited until this trial was over because the results of it have a major implication going forward for the Bitcoin narrative, guys. And what has come out of this trial, at least according to my perspective, is the importance of IP and the blockchain. Okay. The core essence of this trial, despite everything else, despite trying to prove Craig Wright is Satoshi, or if Dave Kleiman was, or if it was a joint thing, I don't think that's the most important piece. The most important piece to come out of this trial, and of course, I find it not a coincidence at all that the markets pump upon the final decision, the closing of this case, the markets pumped. But what I find to be the most important thing that came out of this situation is the discussion of intellectual property on blockchain. Okay. Now, for those who don't know, essentially, really since 2016, Craig Wright and the Climate Estate have been fighting over the intellectual property rights of Bitcoin. Okay. In this case, the resolution essentially went down like this. Initially, if Kleiman was found if he would have lost this case, then $200 billion worth of Bitcoin would have to have been distributed. That would have right away put us into a bear market, guys. I'm going to tell you why. The Climate Estate publicly stated that if they were to have won this trial, they would have taken that portion of their Bitcoin and sold it immediately. And I don't blame them. They were entitled to this fortune. They have been fighting for it for years, so I wouldn't have blamed them for that. However, this information wasn't talked about, wasn't even mentioned on mainstream crypto YouTube, because if that were to happen, it would have completely changed the narrative for Bitcoin. Completely changed the narrative, okay? So we didn't get that outcome. What we got, Craig Wright, of course, found not liable for the breach of climbing business partnership. Essentially, the only thing Craig Wright has to do now is pay $100 million to Kleiman's Info Defense Research Fund. Okay, that's a flash in the pan to him. $100 million. This man has quite a lot of money. More importantly, he has quite a lot of patents, intellectual properties centered around the blockchain industry. Okay, now I'm going to attach a clip to the end of this video, and it's the results of the research that I have done on this very quiet subject, guys. Let me highlight that for you. The blockchain IP industry is so early. It's probably one of the freshest industries, freshest uh sectors that blockchain is getting ready to permeate. And this case, guys, is a staple for that discussion. In 2022, we are going to see intellectual property rights and blockchain all over the place. Okay? Think about it. Earlier in the year, I remember telling you guys about how we're going to see a era in blockchain where the licensing and rights and copyrights are going to be talked about all over the place, right? Sure enough, over in South Korea, you have talks about NFT regulation when it comes to who owns the characters in these NFTs. Okay. And then, of course, you have the major companies coming in: Marvel, Disney, so forth and so on, Fox, AMC coming in with these NFTs. However, they're discussing licensing behind it. Licensing, once you break it all the way down to its base level, we're talking about intellectual property. All the while, guys, while we were getting the metaverse and everything else was coming in and it was really exciting, this case was going on. And if it would have gone any other way than the way it did, I'm telling you, we'd be sitting in a whole different world right now. Right now, we really would. But it didn't go that way. That's good for us. Now we need to pay attention to the results of this. Where do we go now? Okay? It's not necessarily important to decide whether or not Craig Wright is Satoshi. That's not the focus here. The focus is the intellectual property of Bitcoin, okay? And the intellectual property of blockchain. Blockchain is an open source. It's open source technology, but the things that will be built on blockchain require IPs. They require to be registered, okay? The technology for blockchain IP, for blockchain copyrights, trademark, it's so fresh, guys. It's so fresh. Now, I'm going to make this a separate video, but I want to show you guys a platform that I am using right now called Bernstein.io. Okay. With this platform, guys, take a second, log in here. Don't look at my credentials. I'm kidding. But this was the only application, guys. And you can see it's double secure. I got to put in my password twice every time I log into this. But I will definitely put the link to this down in the description, guys, because I want us all to take advantage of this technology, okay? And like I said, it is very, very early on. I could not find many platforms. There was literally this and another platform that costs twice as much, but does the exact same thing as this one. This one was free for first time users. They give you an initial credit to start. But you'll see, guys, what I've been able to get is something that is going to be probably one of the most powerful tools as we go forward into this blockchain space. What we have right here, guys, is a Bitcoin certificate. What I did here was essentially, as you can see, project title, it says Digit Hustle News, submitted by yours truly, and it gave me a fingerprint, transaction ID, hash key, all of this stuff. Essentially, guys, now the Digit Hustle News is verified on blockchain. That means that for eternity, for the remainder of time, blockchain, Digit Hustle News belongs to me. Okay. And this certificate verifies that. And see, what I also love is that it's not only here, but they give you certificates for the EU as well as China, guys. Okay. These are digital receipts, digital time stamped blockchain data that can't be altered, changed, taken, stolen. Okay. When we take, if the event were ever to arise where somebody tried to use the Digit Hustle News and create their own channel and start publicizing it and all that, yeah, you go ahead and do that. But as soon as we go to court, I'm pulling out this document and you're done. You're done. Okay. That's what the power we have if we get on top of this blockchain IP situation right away, guys. And again, I'll put the link down to this in the description, guys, so you can check out Bernstein.io. Okay. Blockchain intellectual properties. This case, the conclusion of this case started that discussion for this industry. And with it only being, this case came finished yesterday. It's been around for 4 years. It's now the eighth. We're the first ones at the door. I want us to be the first ones at the door. So before this gets too long, guys, I do want to send you to this clip. I really urge you to watch it in its entirety. The discussions that they have about blockchain and IP, these are coming from lawyers, okay? Official lawyers, intellectual property guys that, their knowledge comes from the traditional sector, but they are very, very focused on the future of blockchain. And as a matter of fact, the interview comes from 2016, guys. right around the origins of this case. So that shows you right there that this has been a discussion behind the scenes for quite some time. So with all that being said, though, guys, check out this clip. I hope you enjoy it. If so, you know what to do. Hit the like, subscribe, ring that notification bell. And as always, guys, I want you to have a great one, a prosperous one. And most importantly, let's get our IPs together and make this money. I'll see y'all in a minute.
Here today with Professors Justin McCrary and Tejas Narashenia, and we are going to talk about the IP applications of blockchain. First question to start off is, can you tell us in simple terms, what is blockchain?
Sure. So blockchain is a simple technology that allows you to have a record of financial transactions that doesn't require you to have an intermediary that would verify whether those financial transactions took place. So the easy way to think of this in terms of understanding why it's something everybody's talking about is to think of the cost associated with A, the possibility of cheating in connection with financial transactions that are recorded electronically, and B, the cost of monitoring that problem. And so the essential idea of blockchain is we can actually get around that problem with techniques that are borrowed from computer science and older ideas from computer science that basically allows us to build a database of transactions that's self-monitoring.
Is blockchain limited to financial transactions, or does it have perhaps broader application?
In principle, it has broader application. It's just a way of keeping a record of all of the entries that have been made in a particular system. You could imagine other applications of that idea as well.
Now, I know there's been some mystique about who invented the blockchain technology. Can you tell us a little bit about who the inventor is?
So there's a fictitious entity known as Satoshi Nakamoto, who is responsible, or considered to be responsible, for having invented and really popularized the technology. We're not sure exactly who Satoshi Nakamoto is. It's a pseudonym for somebody who, to this date, remains unknown. Craig Wright, in a famous BBC interview, claimed to be Satoshi Nakamoto. So Craig Wright is an Australian, goes on TV, says, I am him, he is me. There's a lot of skepticism for that claim, and no one's really sure.
Why does it matter who Satoshi is?
So we have a system that's first inventor to file. And so the patent really only belongs to the inventor. And so being able to identify who or what Satoshi is, who in fact invented the technology and the particular applications of the technology, is critical to being able to determine who ought to be entitled to the patent and the exclusive rights that flow from it.
And so in talking about the patent, you're talking about perhaps some fundamental technology patents on the blockchain technology.
So Craig Wright has filed for a number of patents. I think it's
50,
more than 50.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of conceiving of it here as one patent that covers, or one set, maybe it's better to say one set of patents that covers the core set of blockchain technology. And whether or not Craig Wright is entitled to claim those patents depends in part on whether or not he is or is part of the team that constitutes Satoshi.
So let's play that out for a little bit. Now, if Craig Wright is Satoshi and is awarded these patents, what are the implications of that on the IP system for blockchain?
In principle, it could have a real chilling effect on the utilization of blockchain.
If Craig Wright is in fact Satoshi, a move to file this large number of patent applications might actually be sort of a public interest move, and I'm wondering if one of you could speak to that briefly.
Sure. So some entities, some companies, and some people have taken their patents and endowed them to the public in the sense that they have promised not to enforce them. And so you could imagine Craig Wright or Satoshi doing something similar where they get the patents in order to prevent other people from claiming patents in this space.
And are there reasons to think that something like that strategy, defensive strategy, might be consistent with the spirit in which Satoshi released the original blockchain?
So far, everything that Satoshi has done in this space seems to be consistent with the sort of open source ethos that also informs some of these patent endowment strategies.
So if Craig Wright is not Satoshi, what does that portend for patent law?
It raises some interesting inventorship questions and challenges. So certainly there's an inventorship question. The challenge, though, is who would bring the inventorship claim? Would Satoshi have to out himself, herself, itself in order to actually challenge Craig Wright's claim that he was the inventor?
But even if you have a situation where it's established that Craig Wright is not Satoshi Nakamoto, isn't it also possible that you could apply for a patent that utilized blockchain in a new way, where you are simply saying the thing that is being invented here is not blockchain, but rather it's the pylon of the utilization of blockchain to some specific application?
Right. I think that's possible. It would depend a little bit on exactly what's in the set of 50 patents that Craig Wright is applying for. But even those raise some really interesting questions. So, what the content of, so depending on what the content of those patent applications is, there are interesting questions about patentable subject matter and obviousness, and whether or not these things should be patentable. These are interesting and I think very much open questions.
Even if Craig Wright is not applying for patents on Satoshi's inventions, but rather on Craig Wright's improvement inventions on blockchain, there may or may not be some patentable subject matter there.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, are there others besides Craig Wright who are active in the patenting space for blockchain?
Yes.
Definitely, and I think it's also fair to say that we probably don't have any idea of the outer bounds of the number of entities that are currently considering patenting particular applications of blockchain.
But in terms of industries, going back to your earlier question, we've seen, I think that there are people in the financial services sectors that are seeking patents on blockchain-related technology, also in telecommunications sectors, in computing sectors. So it's a wide and growing range of companies that are seeking to patent aspects of the technology or particular applications of the technology.
What should we expect to see as this becomes fertile ground for patent applications? And maybe Professor McCrary, you want to talk about that from an economics perspective?
Well, I think one problem from an economic perspective is that you shouldn't grant the patent if it turns out the innovation was going to take place in the absence of the patent. So that's a very simple idea. It's of course hard to know exactly what would have happened in the absence of such a patent, but as a conceptual matter, the patent system should be there to encourage innovations that you think wouldn't have occurred without that patent. That's the reason for its existence. And if you think that there's something that is small enough improvement that somebody would have done it very rapidly, even without a patent, then that's something where you don't need the patent system to encourage that type of innovation. Whether that's the same thing as the legal test for what's patentable is, of course, a question where I think we both know that the answer is no. The economic principle is not what the legal test is. But from an economic perspective, the thing that we should all be worried about is patent activity that actually doesn't have the result of encouraging innovation, but actually has the result of discouraging innovation. And I think it's an open question whether that type of concern is valid here. But I also think it's right that it's at least time to consider whether that's going to take place.
Do you have, from a patent law perspective, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think one other thing we're likely to see is some litigation.
Really?
I think we're going to see some challenges, not only to the Craig Wright patents, but also to some of the other patent applications that have been filed, because there are a lot of open questions here. And I think people are going to want to know what is and isn't patentable in this new and exciting space.
Yeah.
Do you think that that is going to be just a natural extension of the controversies and questions that have arisen out of the Supreme Court's Alice decision, or do you think there's some special features in blockchain that will take that to a new dimension?
So I think a little bit of both. I think that we're definitely going to see some of the Alice type patentable subject matter challenges, but I think blockchain presents something of a new challenge. We're going to see something of a new challenge because I think blockchain is a particular type of algorithm that sits on a computer. So if Alice says using a computer isn't enough of an inventive step, it's an interesting and open question whether or not using blockchain, which is itself a algorithmic computer-based implementation, is enough of an inventive step to get you past the Alice test. And that's something that I think is new and remains to be seen.
If we assume that that there's a strategy of filing the fundamental patents as a defensive approach to get those committed to the public, dedicated to the public, does filing a large number of improvement patents on top of that tend to impede or defeat that kind of a defensive strategy?
It seems like it could easily defeat it.
Say in the end, do patents in a new technology like this, or the particular patents we've been talking about, tend to encourage innovation, reward innovation, or do they discourage downstream innovation?
So I would say that there's several open questions in this space. But one open question for sure is whether patenting activity in this space is going to discourage the use of blockchain, or whether it's going to encourage it. I'm concerned that it might have the impact of discouraging it.
Okay, thanks. Anything you'd like to add to that?
There's a really difficult empirical question, which is whether or not we would have more or less innovation, and of what kind, if we didn't have the patent, this particular patent or the patent system in general.
The thing that's really interesting is blockchain is something that was specifically following in the thought stream of the open source community. And the open source community is something that exists in a world with patents, and yet is specifically trying to put everything into the public domain. And so in a way, we have this odd collision of worlds where if you think of the open source community in the world with patents, the attempt is made to give to the public, and then the question is whether patents basically allow that, again, to be taken back.